Are you serious? This table is completely unacceptable, it's wobbling, and we are right next to the kitchen.
Chloe, please, it's fine. We can make it work.
The city of Atlanta sprawled beneath the floor-to-ceiling glass of the penthouse office like a circuit board of gold and amber light, a living testament to the kind of ambition that consumes a man's soul before it ever fills his pockets. Elias Thorne stood at the edge of the glass, his reflection ghostly against the skyline, a tall, broad-shouldered silhouette that commanded respect even in the silence of an empty room. He was a man who had built his empire not with loans or handouts, but with the calloused hands of his grandfather and the sharp, architectural brilliance of a mind that saw patterns where others saw chaos. As the founder and CEO of Thorne Dynamics, he had reshaped the skyline, but his most prized possession was not the steel and glass structures that pierced the clouds, but the quiet dignity of his lineage, the blood of sharecroppers and bricklayers that ran through his veins, reminding him that the higher you climb, the harder the wind blows. Tonight, however, the wind wasn't howling outside. It was a cold draft moving through the hollow chambers of his own heart, a chill brought on not by the weather, but by the woman who was supposed to be his sanctuary. Elias turned away from the window, his eyes landing on the mahogany desk, where a single, innocent-looking tablet lay illuminated, its screen glowing with a betrayal so precise, so calculated, that it felt less like a heartbreak and more like a corporate assassination. He had come home early to surprise Chloe for their upcoming 5th anniversary, a milestone that in his mind represented the solidification of their union, the moment they moved from newlyweds to a legacy couple. But what he found unlocked on her device shattered that illusion into 1,000 jagged shards. The open tab wasn't a gift registry or a vacation planner. It was a detailed email thread with a high-profile divorce attorney, subject line, asset division and vesting period. Elias moved toward the desk with the heavy, deliberate steps of a man walking to his own execution, his hand hovering over the screen as he reread the lines that had burned themselves into his retinas an hour ago. The email from Chloe was clinical, devoid of the warmth she feigned at dinner parties, explicitly asking if the 5-year clause in their prenuptial agreement was ironclad. She had written, "I need to know that if I file on the morning of the 13th, the 50% equity in the hospitality group is secured. I can't do another month of his lectures on humility and building together. I put in my time. I want my payout." The words, "put in my time," echoed in Elias's mind, vibrating with a cruelty that made his stomach turn. To her, their marriage wasn't a partnership. It was a prison sentence, a shift she was clocking in for, waiting for the whistle to blow so she could collect her wages and leave. He remembered the way she had looked at him that morning, kissing his cheek, adjusting his tie, telling him she loved him. It had all been performance art. She was an actress waiting for the curtain call, and he was the unsuspecting audience applauding his own robbery. A flash of rage, hot and blinding, threatened to overtake him, the urge to storm into the master bedroom where she was currently getting a massage and scream the truth until the walls shook. But Elias Thorne did not become a tycoon by reacting to emotion. He became a king by strategizing. He took a deep breath, the scent of sandalwood and old leather filling his lungs, and he forced his pulse to slow, his mind shifting gears from husband to architect. If she wanted to treat their marriage like a business transaction, he would oblige her. He would audit the account. But before he signed over half his kingdom, he needed to know the depth of the rot. He needed to know if there was any humanity left beneath the layers of designer silk and social climbing, or if he had truly married a monster. He needed a test. The plan formed in his mind with terrifying clarity, a structure built on the foundation of her own greed. He would give her exactly what she feared most: failure. Chloe didn't love Elias. She loved the access Elias provided. She loved the Black American Express card, the seats at the Hawks games, the whispers of envy when she walked into a gala. If he stripped that away, if he presented himself as a man broken by the very market he sought to dominate, would she stand by him? Or would she accelerate her exit, exposing her true nature before the ink on the settlement could dry? He decided then and there that the 5th anniversary celebration she had been obsessing over, a dinner at Obsidian, the crown jewel of his restaurant portfolio, though she didn't know the extent of his ownership, would be the stage for her final audition. He wouldn't confront her tonight. He would let her sleep in the comfort of her deception. He turned off the tablet, wiped his fingerprints from the screen, and walked out of the office, his face a mask of stone. When he entered the living room, Chloe was there, wrapped in a cashmere robe, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, her smile bright and practiced, the eyes engaging but never truly seeing him. "Hey, baby," she cooed. "I didn't hear you come in. You look tired. Heavy as the head that wears the crown, right?" The irony of her statement almost made him laugh, a bitter, dry sound that died in his throat. "Something like that," Elias replied, his voice rough. "We need to talk, Chloe. Something happened at the firm today." He watched her carefully as he sat down, noting the subtle tightening of her jaw, the way her thumb hovered over her phone screen as if ready to text her lawyer the moment he dropped the bomb. "What is it?" she asked, her tone feigning concern but her eyes darting to his empty hands, checking for a gift, a bonus check, anything of value. Elias leaned forward, clasping his hands between his knees, channeling the exhaustion of his ancestors. "I took a risk," he lied, weaving the fabrication with the same precision he used to design bridges. A massive leverage on the new tech park in Austin. The financing fell through this afternoon. The bank called the loan, Chloe. They're freezing the liquid assets. The accounts, they might be locked as early as tomorrow morning. He let the silence hang in the air, thick and suffocating. He watched the color drain from her face, not out of fear for him, but out of fear for herself. She didn't reach out to hold his hand. She gripped the arm of the sofa, her knuckles turning white. "What do you mean, locked?" she whispered, her voice trembling with a very specific kind of panic. "What about the anniversary? What about us? You said you were worth 9 figures, Elias. You can't just lose it all in a day." "It's a domino effect," he continued, deepening the lie. "If I can't liquidate the holdings by Monday, I might have to file for bankruptcy protection. We might have to sell the penthouse. We might have to move into the old rental in Decatur for a while until I get back on my feet." He watched her recoil physically at the mention of Decatur, as if he had suggested they move to a leper colony. The disgust was momentary, quickly masked by a look of calculation, but he saw it. He saw the wheels turning. She was doing the math. If he went bankrupt before the vesting period next week, 50% of zero was zero. Her 5-year investment would yield nothing. "But we can fix this, right?" she asked, her voice shrill. "You have hidden accounts. You have offshore things. Everyone does." Elias shook his head slowly. "I keep it clean, Chloe. You know that. My reputation is everything." He stood up, walking toward her, testing the waters one last time. "I need you to be strong with me, baby. If we lose the money, we still have each other. We can rebuild. I did it once. I can do it again. As long as I have you in my corner, I'm rich, right?" He reached for her hand. Her skin was cold, clammy. She let him hold it for a second before pulling away under the guise of fixing her hair. "Of course," she said, her voice hollow, devoid of any conviction. "But maybe we shouldn't tell anyone yet, especially not my friends. I have a reputation too, Elias." The days leading up to the anniversary were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Elias played the part of the crumbling titan perfectly. He started leaving his Rolexes in the safe, wearing his older, slightly frayed shirts, driving his beat-up Ford truck, the one he kept for construction site visits, instead of the Maybach. He watched Chloe unravel. She became snappy, distant, constantly on her phone in the bathroom, whispering in hushed tones. She stopped cooking. She stopped asking about his day. She was distancing herself from the wreckage before the ship even sank. On the morning of their anniversary, the air in the penthouse was toxic. Chloe was manic, obsessing over her outfit for the dinner at Obsidian, a dress that cost more than his father's first house. "We have to keep up appearances," she snapped when he asked why she was dressing up if they were supposedly on the brink of ruin. "If people smell blood in the water, they'll eat you alive, Elias. I am doing this for you." The gaslighting was impressive. She wasn't doing it for him. She was terrified that if she looked poor, her social standing would evaporate along with his bank account. "I'm not wearing a suit tonight," Elias announced calmly as evening approached. He was standing in the foyer, dressed in a simple, faded gray polo shirt, dark jeans that had seen better days, and his old work boots, the ones with the scuffs on the toes. Chloe, who looked like she had stepped out of a Vogue editorial in a shimmering emerald gown and diamonds, froze in her tracks. Her eyes bulged, scanning him from head to toe with unmasked horror. "You are joking," she hissed, checking the hallway to make sure the housekeeper wasn't listening. "We are going to Obsidian. Do you know how hard it was to get a reservation? The elite circle is going to be there. Brad, Jessica, the senator's wife. You cannot walk in there looking like the help, Elias. Go change. Put on the Armani." Elias didn't move. He stood his ground, a monolith of calm against her frantic energy. "If we are going to be poor, Chloe, we might as well get used to it. Besides, these are the clothes I wore when I built my first company. They are honest. If your friends can't respect me in this, they don't respect me at all." "It's not about respect, it's about humiliation," she shrieked, her mask slipping completely. "I have spent 5 years building a brand as the wife of a successful man. I will not let you drag me into the gutter with you just because you made some stupid business mistake. If you wear that, you are not sitting with me." The ultimatum hung in the air, sharp and final. This was the moment, the fork in the road. A wife who loved him would have said, "I don't care what you wear. Let's just celebrate us." But Chloe had just drawn a line in the sand, and she was standing on the side of vanity. Elias felt a profound sense of grief, mourning the marriage he thought he had, but it was quickly replaced by a cold, hard resolve. "Fine," he said softly. "I'll drive separately. I'll meet you there." He walked out the door without looking back, leaving her fuming in the marble entryway, unaware that she had just failed the first part of the test. The drive to Obsidian was a blur of neon lights and heavy thoughts. Obsidian was his masterpiece, a restaurant he had conceived, designed and funded under a holding company to keep his name off the marquee, allowing it to succeed on merit rather than his celebrity. It was a place of dark velvet, gold accents, and exclusivity. When he pulled his dusty truck up to the valet stand, the young attendant, a boy named Kevin, whom Elias had helped with tuition fees, started to jog over with a smile, ready to greet Mr. Thorne. Elias rolled down the window and pressed a finger to his lips, shaking his head slightly. Kevin, sharp and loyal, understood immediately. The smile remained, but the deferential "sir" was swallowed. He simply took the keys and gave a subtle nod. Elias stepped out onto the sidewalk, the contrast between his attire and the parade of luxury cars, stark and jarring. He saw Chloe's Uber Black pull up. She stepped out, radiating glamour, but as soon as she saw him standing there in his work boots, her face twisted into a snarl. She rushed over, grabbing his arm with a grip that was painful. "You actually did it," she whispered venomously. "You are actually trying to ruin my life." They walked toward the entrance, the tension between them radiating like heat from a fire. The hostess, a woman named Sarah who had been with Elias since his first cafe, looked up. Her eyes widened when she saw Elias, her mouth opening to welcome the owner. But Elias caught her gaze, a steel-hard look that said, "Play along." He saw the confusion in her eyes, then the realization. She composed herself. "Reservation for Thorne?" she asked professionally. "Yes," Chloe answered, stepping in front of Elias as if to hide him. "And please tell me our table is ready. The VIP booth near the fountain?" Sarah looked at the tablet, then at Elias, then back to Chloe. "Yes, Mrs. Thorne. Your party has already arrived. The senator's wife and the others are seated." Chloe let out a breath of relief, smoothing her dress. Good. Let's go. She started walking, but then stopped, turning to Elias. They were in the vestibule, just out of earshot of the dining room. Listen to me, she said, her voice low and dangerous. I cannot have you sitting at that table looking like a janitor. Brad is bringing a potential investor for my boutique. I need this night to be perfect. You are going to ruin the aesthetic. Elias looked at her, his heart finally turning to ice. So what do you suggest, Chloe? Should I wait in the car? Chloe looked around, her eyes landing on a small, wobbly, two-top table tucked away in a dark alcove near the swinging kitchen doors. It was the overflow table, usually reserved for staff meals or solo diners who didn't want to be seen. It was right next to the path where the busboys carried dirty dishes and uncomfortably close to the restrooms. There, she pointed. Sit there. You can still see us, but you won't be in the photos. Please, Elias. If you love me, you'll do this. Don't embarrass me. The audacity was breathless. She was asking her husband, the man who paid for the dress on her back, to sit in the shadows like a discarded toy while she played queen in the light. Elias looked at the table, then at the VIP booth in the distance where her friends were laughing, clinking crystal glasses. He looked back at Chloe. You want me to sit by the kitchen? He asked, giving her one last chance to redeem herself, one last chance to realize the madness of her request. Yes, she said, checking her reflection in the glass. Order a burger or something. I'll come check on you later. Just stay out of the way. Okay, Elias said, the word heavy with double meaning. I'll sit at the separate table. He watched her turn on her heel, the emerald dress swishing around her ankles, and strut into the main dining room. She was greeted with cheers and air kisses. He saw her point vaguely back toward the entrance, probably making up a lie about him being stuck at work or parking the car. Elias walked slowly to the small, dark table near the kitchen. He sat down. The chair wobbled. The air smelled faintly of dish soap and sanitizer from the kitchen traffic. A busboy walked past with a tray of half-eaten lobster, the smell wafting over him. It was the ultimate degradation. But as Elias sat there, alone in the crowded room he owned, a strange calm settled over him. He pulled out his phone and sent a single text message to Marcus, the general manager of Obsidian, who was currently in the back office. The text read, Phase 2. She is at table 1. I am at table 42. Do not acknowledge me yet. Let her order. Let her run it up. And cut the cards. From his vantage point in the shadows, Elias had a direct line of sight to the VIP booth. He could see Chloe laughing, throwing her head back, her hand resting on Brad's arm, a little too comfortably. He could see the way she basked in the attention, completely unbothered by the fact that her husband was sitting 10 yards away staring at a wall. A waiter approached Elias. Leo, a young man Elias had mentored. Leo looked horrified. Mr. Thorne? He whispered, bending low so no one would see. What are you doing here? Why are you... Is this a joke? Let me get you the owner's suite. Elias shook his head, his eyes never leaving Chloe. No, Leo. I'm exactly where I need to be. Bring me a water. And listen to me carefully. Whatever that table orders, you bring them the reserve stock, the most expensive. Push the Wagyu. Push the royal caviar. Keep the champagne flowing. If she asks for a bottle, bring 2. Leo looked confused, terrified even. But the authority in Elias's voice was absolute. Yes, sir, Leo stammered, backing away. Elias sat back, crossing his arms over his chest. He watched as the night unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. He watched Chloe order with reckless abandon. He saw the waiters bring out the grand seafood tower, the smoke from the dry ice curling around her smiling face. He saw the sommelier present a bottle of 1998 vintage red, a bottle that cost more than a Honda Civic. He saw Chloe wave her hand dismissively, accepting it, thinking she was the queen of the world. She was spending his money. Money she thought was gone, or money she thought she was entitled to to impress people who wouldn't look at her twice if she were broke. She was digging her own grave with a silver spoon. And Elias? Elias just sat in the dark, sipping his tap water, waiting for the check to drop. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Now, all that was left was to spring the cage. The atmosphere inside Obsidian was a curated symphony of excess, a sensory overload designed to make the patrons feel like gods among men, and from his vantage point in the shadows, Elias watched his wife play her part in the pantomime with a terrifying naturalism. The air was thick with the scent of shaved black truffles and seared Wagyu beef, aromas that usually filled Elias with pride, but tonight smelled like ash and deceit. He sat motionless at the small, wobbly table near the kitchen doors, a glass of tepid tap water his only companion, while 20 feet away, Chloe presided over a feast fit for royalty. He watched as the waiters, his employees who were casting nervous, confused glances his way, delivered platters of oysters on beds of crushed ice, towers of shellfish, and bottles of wine that cost more than the tuition checks he wrote for his scholarship programs. Chloe was in her element, her laughter ringing out a little too loudly, a performative sound meant to signal to the room that she belonged, that she was the queen of this domain. But Elias wasn't just watching, he was listening. He had designed the acoustics of the main dining room personally, utilizing a specific architectural curvature in the ceiling, meant to carry the ambient energy of the room. But from this specific angle in the alcove, it acted as a whisper gallery. The sounds from the VIP booth drifted over the hum of the restaurant with crystal clarity, turning his table into a witness stand. He took a slow sip of water as the conversation at the booth shifted from gossip to the future, and what he heard made his blood run cold. Chloe was leaning in toward Jessica, her voice lowered but distinct, carrying the conspiratorial tone of a thief planning a heist. "It's literally 18 days, Chloe said, swirling her glass of the 1998 reserve. "I double-checked with the lawyer this morning. The prenup has a vesting clause for the hospitality shares. If I file before the 5-year mark, I get a flat settlement. If I file after, I get equity, actual ownership stakes in his portfolio." Elias felt a physical blow to his chest, invisible but devastating. It wasn't just about the money. It was the cold, calculated patience of it. She had been counting the days, marking a calendar not for a celebration of their love, but for the expiration date of her performance. Jessica laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "You're bad, Chloe. So what's the plan? You just wake up on the anniversary and serve him papers?" Chloe smirked, taking a bite of caviar. "No, I'm not an amateur. I'll wait a week. Let him think the anniversary went well. Then I'll start a fight. Something big. I'll make him think it's his fault so he doesn't fight the asset division. He's soft, you know? He's sentimental. He'll give me whatever I want, just to stop the guilt." The cruelty of her words stripped away the last lingering layer of hesitation in Elias's heart. He had held onto a microscopic shred of hope that maybe, just maybe, this was all a misunderstanding, that she was just stressed or insecure. But hearing her weaponize his own kindness against him, hearing her call him soft for loving her, severed the bond irrevocably. He wasn't her husband. He was her mark. He was the long con. Elias set his glass down on the wobbly table, his hand trembling not with sadness, but with a cold, controlled fury. He looked at the phone in his lap and typed a single message to Marcus, who was standing by the POS terminal at the bar, watching the scene with a hardened jaw. The text was simple. "Execute. No mercy." Elias watched Marcus look at his phone, then look up at Elias across the room. A subtle nod was exchanged. Marcus tapped the screen of the main terminal, initiating the lockout protocol, usually reserved for suspected fraud, but tonight applied specifically to the cards associated with the Thorne family trust, cards that were currently in Chloe's clutch purse. The trap was primed. Now, Elias just had to wait for the bill. The meal at the VIP table wound down an hour later, the table littered with the debris of gluttony, half-eaten lobster tails, empty wine bottles, and discarded napkins. The laughter had dulled into a satiated, drunken murmur. Elias watched as Leo, the waiter, approached the table with the leather bill folder. He moved with a solemnity that Elias appreciated. Leo knew what was coming. He placed the folder gently in front of Chloe. "Thank you for dining with us," Leo said, his voice neutral. "Whenever you're ready." Chloe smiled benevolently at him, the smile of a benevolent ruler dismissing a servant. "Thanks, sweetie," she said, not even looking at the bill as she reached for her purse. "I've got this, guys. It's on the house account." She pulled out the sleek black credit card, the one Elias paid off every month, and slipped it into the folder. Leo took it and walked away. Elias counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. He saw Leo at the terminal. He saw the swipe. He saw the red light on the machine. He saw Leo swipe again, then a third time. Elias watched Leo walk back to the table, the folder held tight against his chest. "Ma'am," Leo said, his voice just loud enough to cut through the conversation at the table. "I'm afraid the card was declined." The silence that fell over the VIP booth was instantaneous. Chloe let out a scoff of disbelief, snatching the card back. "Don't be ridiculous. That's a black card. There's no limit. Try it again." Leo shook his head politely. "I tried it 3 times, Mrs. Thorne. The system is flagging it as frozen by account holder. Do you have another form of payment?" Chloe's face flushed a deep, blotchy crimson. She laughed nervously, looking at her friends. That's absurd. Elias must have messed up the auto pay or something. God, he's so incompetent with finances lately." She dug through her purse and pulled out a second card, a platinum Visa. "Here, use this one." Leo took it, walked back to the machine, and returned 30 seconds later. "Declined, ma'am. Same error code. Frozen." The air at the table shifted. The smiles on Brad and Jessica's faces evaporated, replaced by the wary, predatory look of people who smell weakness. The rich friend facade was cracking. "Is there a problem, Chloe?" Brad asked, leaning back, his tone shifting from friendly to judgmental. "I thought you said Elias was loaded. Why are your cards bouncing?" Chloe was sweating now, visible beads forming on her forehead, despite the cool air conditioning. "It's a bank error," she snapped, her voice rising an octave. "I have plenty of money. This is just a glitch." She looked at the bill for the first time, and her eyes bulged. $12,400. For dinner. This is insane. You said the wine was complimentary. Leo stood his ground. "The manager sent the bottle, ma'am, but our policy states that complimentary items are only comped once the primary bill is settled. Until then, everything is itemized." Chloe looked around the table, desperation clawing at her throat. "Brad! Jessica! Can one of you just cover it? I'll Venmo you instantly. My app is linked to a different account." She looked at Brad with pleading eyes. Brad, the man who had been eating Wagyu beef on her dime for 2 hours, suddenly patted his pockets. "Oh, wow. I left my wallet in the valet, in the glove box. I don't have my cards on me." He looked away, unable to meet her gaze. Jessica suddenly became very interested in her cuticles. "I only have my corporate card, Chloe. I can't put a personal dinner on it. Audit season, you know?" The betrayal was swift and absolute. These people, whom she had prioritized over her husband, whom she had insulted Elias to impress, were abandoning her the second the check arrived. They were parasites, detaching themselves from the host the moment the blood ran dry. Chloe sat there, humiliated, the folder burning a hole in the tablecloth. She had no money. She had no working cards. She was trapped in the city's most exclusive restaurant with a 5-figure debt and no way out. Her eyes darted around the room, panic setting in until they landed on the dark corner near the kitchen, the separate table, the peasant table. There sat Elias, calmly chewing on a piece of bread, watching her. He was her safety net. He was the one she always ran to when she broke something. She hated him for it, but she needed him. With a huff of indignation, she stood up, smoothing her dress, and marched across the dining room floor. Every step was a walk of shame, eyes following her, but she held her head high, her arrogance acting as a shield. She arrived at Elias's table and leaned down, her voice a venomous whisper so the nearby diners wouldn't hear. "Give me your wallet, now." Elias didn't look up. He continued to butter his bread roll with methodical precision. "Hello to you too, Chloe. How was the Wagyu? It looked tender." She slammed her hand down on the table, making the silverware jump. "Stop it. My cards aren't working. It's some stupid bank glitch. I need your card to pay the bill. Brad and Jessica are waiting." Elias finally looked up, his eyes flat and unreadable. "My cards?" he asked innocently. "But Chloe, I thought I was broke. Remember, I lost everything. I'm just a failure, a dead weight. Isn't that what you told them?" Chloe's face twisted in rage. "I don't care what I said. I know you have an emergency card. Give it to me before I make a scene and tell everyone you're abusing me financially." Even in defeat, she was threatening him. She knew no other language but manipulation. "I can't help you, Chloe," Elias said, his voice calm, but carrying across the sudden silence of the room. "You wanted a separate table. You wanted a separate life. It seems you have a separate bill." Chloe gasped, realizing he wasn't folding. She turned around, looking for a manager, looking for anyone to save her. She spotted Marcus walking toward them, looking impeccable in his tuxedo, his face stern. Relief washed over her. She knew Marcus. She had met him briefly at other events. He would recognize her status. "Manager!" she cried out, pointing a manicured finger at Elias. "Thank God. This man, my husband, he is refusing to pay for our dinner. He's holding my money hostage. Please, tell him to pay so we can leave. He's causing a disturbance." The entire restaurant had gone quiet. Forks hovered halfway to mouths. The drama was palpable. Marcus stopped a few feet away, flanked by 2 large security guards. He looked at Chloe, his expression unreadable, then shifted his gaze to Elias. Chloe smirked triumphantly at Elias. "See? Now you're going to get kicked out." But then, the axis of the world shifted. Marcus didn't speak to Chloe. He didn't reprimand the man in the dirty work boots. Instead, Marcus turned his entire body toward Elias, clasped his hands in front of him, and bowed. It wasn't a nod. It was a deep, formal bow of profound respect, the kind reserved for royalty or heads of state. The room gasped. Chloe froze, her pointing finger trembling in the air. "Good evening, sir," Marcus said, his voice booming with authority as he straightened up. "I apologize for the disturbance. Is everything to your satisfaction?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Chloe blinked, her brain unable to process the data. "Sir?" she sputtered. "Why are you bowing to him? He's a nobody. He's a factory worker." Marcus turned to her slowly, his eyes cold as steel. "Factory worker?" he repeated, a dry chuckle escaping his lips. "Ma'am, you seem to be misinformed. This is Mr. Elias Thorne. He owns this building. He owns the land it sits on. He owns the Obsidian Group, and he owns the signature on my paycheck. He is not a nobody. He is the reason we are all standing here." The color drained from Chloe's face so fast she looked like a corpse standing upright. Her knees buckled slightly, and she grabbed the back of Elias's chair to steady herself. "What?" she whispered, the word barely escaping her lips. "Owner? But you said—" She looked at Elias, her eyes wide with horror and realization. The dusty truck, the work boots, the financial crisis. The pieces slammed together in her mind, forming a picture of her own destruction. Elias stood up slowly, unfolding his height until he towered over her. He brushed a crumb from his faded polo shirt. "I lied, Chloe," he said, his voice deep and resonating with the finality of a judge's gavel. "I told you I was losing everything to see if you would stay for me, or for the lifestyle. I sat at this table next to the garbage to see if you had enough respect to sit beside me. But you didn't. You made me hide." You mocked me. And while you were eating my food and drinking my wine, I heard you tell your friends that you were waiting for the ink to dry on the divorce settlement. He took a step closer to her, and she shrank back, the confident socialite reduced to a trembling child. You called me soft, Elias continued, his voice dropping to a whisper that only she and the nearby tables could hear. You said I would give you whatever you wanted out of guilt. You were wrong. I'm not soft, I'm patient, and my patience just ran out. Chloe began to stammer, tears welling up in her eyes, tears of fear, not remorse. Elias, baby, please. It was just talk. I was drunk. I didn't mean it. I love you. I was stressed about the money. We can fix this. She reached for his hand, but he pulled it away as if her touch were corrosive. There is no we anymore, Chloe. You wanted the 5-year vesting period. You missed it by 18 days. You get nothing. Elias turned to Marcus. Marcus, regarding the bill at table 1. Marcus snapped to attention. Yes, sir. Elias looked over at the VIP booth where Brad and Jessica were looking down at their phones, terrified of making eye contact. Comp the meal for the guests. Mr. Brad and Miss Jessica are free to go. They are parasites, but they are guests. Chloe let out a breath of relief. Oh, thank God. Thank you, Elias. Let's just go home and... Elias cut her off with a raised hand. I wasn't finished. Comp the guests. But this woman... He pointed at Chloe, his finger steady. She is not a guest. She is not my wife. She demanded a separate table, and she demanded a separate check. She pays for her share. Full price. No discounts. Marcus nodded. Understood, sir. The bill for her portion is approximately $4,000. I don't have it, Chloe screamed, the veneer of sanity cracking completely. I don't have the money. You cut my cards. Elias looked at her with a detachment that was more painful than hate. Then I guess you'll have to wash dishes, or call your lawyer. But you aren't leaving this building until the debt is settled. And once it is, don't come back to the penthouse. The locks have already been changed. Your things are in boxes in the lobby of the building. He turned his back on her, signaling the end of the conversation. Escort her to the office to work out a payment plan, Elias instructed Marcus. And then escort her off the property. No! Elias! You can't do this! Chloe screamed as the 2 large security guards stepped forward, gently but firmly taking her by the arms. She thrashed, her heels scraping against the polished floor, her dignity disintegrating in real time. I'm your wife! I'm Mrs. Thorne! Elias began to walk toward the kitchen, walking past the stunned staff who looked at him with awe. He didn't look back at the woman screaming his name. He walked through the swinging doors, into the heat and noise of the kitchen, where the chefs stopped chopping and the line cooks paused their searing. They all looked at him, the man in the dirty boots who signed their checks. Elias nodded to them. Keep working, he said softly. Service isn't over. The aftermath was swift and brutal, a dismantling of a life built on sand. Chloe was forced to call her parents to pay the bill, a humiliation that spread through her social circle like wildfire before morning. The divorce proceedings were not the battle she had anticipated. They were a slaughter. The ironclad strategy she had bragged about to her friends crumbled under the weight of the evidence Elias had gathered. The audio recordings from the restaurant, the browser history, the text messages. The prenuptial agreement held firm. She walked away with exactly what she had brought into the marriage: debt and a rapidly fading beauty. The friends she had tried so hard to impress vanished, blocking her number the moment her status plummeted. She was radioactive in the social scene of Atlanta. 6 months later, the city skyline looked the same, but the man watching it had changed. Elias stood on the balcony of a new property, a jazz club he was opening in the historic district. He was dressed in a suit, sharp and tailored, but he wore it with an ease he hadn't felt in years. Beside him stood a woman named Alana. She wasn't a model, and she didn't care about the elite circle. She was a pediatrician he had met while volunteering at a hospital. She held his arm not for stability, but for connection. You okay? She asked, sensing his quiet mood. Elias looked at her, really looked at her, and smiled. "Yeah," he said. "I'm just thinking about how expensive it is to try and look rich, and how cheap it is to actually be real." Across town, in a diner that smelled of grease and stale coffee, a waitress in a stained apron hurried to table 4. Her feet ached, and her hands were dry from the sanitizer. "Where is my refill?" a customer barked, snapping his fingers at her. Chloe flinched, pushing a lock of hair out of her face. She looked tired, her eyes dull, the spark of arrogance extinguished by the grinding reality of survival. "Coming right up, sir," she muttered, hurrying to the coffee pot. As she poured the coffee, she glanced at the TV mounted in the corner. It was a news segment about the opening of the new jazz club, featuring a shot of Elias Thorne, looking happy and powerful, with a beautiful woman by his side. Chloe stared at the screen for a second too long, the coffee overflowing the cup and burning her hand. She hissed in pain, tears pricking her eyes, but nobody at the table noticed. Nobody cared. She wiped the spill with a rag, lowered her head, and went back to work. Elias had taught her the ultimate lesson, one that no amount of alimony could ever buy. He taught her that true value isn't in what you wear or where you sit, but in who you are when the cards get declined. He taught her that the person you treat like a stepping stone might just be the one holding the keys to the castle. And as the camera panned away from Elias on the screen, fading to black, the message was clear to anyone watching. You can fake wealth, you can fake status, but you can never fake the karma that comes for you when the check finally clears.